Hello and welcome to my presentation on groundwater monitoring. My name is John Drage. I'm a hydrogeologist with the Nova Scotia Geological Survey, and I'm going to be speaking about building a low-cost, community-based, real-time aquifer drought monitoring network in Nova Scotia. So let's start with some background information about groundwater. Groundwater is water found under the ground. It's stored in cracks and spaces in soil and rock in geologic formations called aquifers. And because it exists under the ground, we can't see it, and so it's essentially an invisible resource. And that leads to a lot of misconceptions about groundwater, and it also leads to the importance of groundwater often being overlooked. One of the most common misconceptions about groundwater is that it exists in underground rivers and lakes, and that's not true. It actually exists in cracks and spaces in soil and rock, and it's continually moving through those cracks and spaces. So groundwater is part of the water cycle. It makes up about 99% of the available fresh water on Earth. So it's important to remember as you look out over the Earth's surface and you look at rivers and lakes, that represents only a small portion of the available fresh water, about 1% of the Earth's fresh water. The majority of the available fresh water on Earth actually exists underground in aquifers. Now, groundwater is important to the environment because it discharges to surface water bodies to maintain flow and sustain ecological habitats. So when you look at a stream during the summer when there hasn't been any rainfall for a long time, the majority of water in that stream or river is actually coming from groundwater that discharges to the stream. Now, groundwater is also important to humans because it provides about half the drinking water in the world at this point, and we expect our reliance on groundwater to increase in the future because groundwater represents the majority of fresh water available in the world. And secondly, as climate change progresses, we expect to see more drought situations. And groundwater is much more resilient to drought than surface water simply because aquifers store so much water. Now, groundwater is also extremely important to Nova Scotia. And here, approximately 40% of our population relies on domestic wells for their water supply. So I started working on this groundwater monitoring project for a couple of reasons. One is the reason I already mentioned, that so much of our population in Nova Scotia relies on groundwater for their water supplies. And the other was that we had a fairly severe drought in Nova Scotia in 2016. And it was particularly severe in southwest Nova Scotia, where it was the driest summer since 1880. Now this figure shows the precipitation report for the summer of 2016, and the way you read this is that for each location there's a number in white on the top that shows the number of millimeters of rainfall that we got during the summer of 2016, and then the number in yellow below that is the normal rainfall for the summer. And then the percentage beside those is the percent of rainfall that we received in the summer of 2016 compared to the normal. So any percentage below 100 is less than normal rainfall. And you can see right across Nova Scotia, it was quite dry. We received less than normal rainfall in most locations, but it was particularly dry in southwest Nova Scotia. In the Yarmouth area, we can see in the figure that they received 32% of normal rainfall that summer. And the summer of 2016 was also the fourth hottest on record in Nova Scotia. And this hot, dry weather caused groundwater levels to decline, and that caused over 1,000 private water wells to go dry. And some municipalities reported that 25% of homes had no water. And in fact, since that time, we've had two other similar droughts in southwest Nova Scotia in 2018 and last year, 2020. And all three of these years, 2016, 2018, and 2020, were in the top 10 driest summers that they've had in southwest Nova Scotia in the last 140 years. And climate scientists tell us that we should expect more seasonal droughts like this in the future because of climate change. And here we see a few pictures of some of the effects of the 2016 drought in Nova Scotia, including the effect of forest fires and also water shortages. You can see pictures of people checking the water level in their well to see how much water they have left. People hauling water to their neighbors whose wells have gone dry. Other people providing water to their livestock, and also well drillers who were very busy that summer replacing shallow wells that had gone dry with deeper drilled wells. So there were a number of things that were done in response to the 2016 drought to help people that were experiencing water shortages. There were municipal water deliveries to homes and businesses, and also water fill stations that were set up so people could come and fill up water containers if their wells had gone dry. Schools, community centers, and provincial parks were made available so people could come and have showers and do their laundry. The provincial government also passed legislation that allowed municipalities to lend money to homeowners to upgrade their water supplies, and this was primarily used for people who had shallow dug wells so that they could have money to install deep drilled wells. Now, one of the things we did at the Nova Scotia Geological Survey was to prepare a map of that showed drought impacts to private wells, and that's shown in this figure. And this map was made using a combination of precipitation information that showed the areas where the drought was severest, in combination of information that showed where the most shallow wells were located in the province. Now, the areas in blue are the areas that had low impact, and the areas in yellow and orange are the areas of high impact. And you can see down near Yarmouth in the southwest part of the province is where the drought in 2016 was particularly severe, and that's because of two reasons. One is that's where it was driest, and secondly, that part of the province happens to have the most shallow dug wells in the province. So those two combined made the drought impacts most severe in that part of the province. In order to manage the response to a drought, it's important to understand the status of the drought, and this can be done with aquifer monitoring. Now, during the 2016 drought in Nova Scotia, there were a couple of groundwater monitoring networks available. One was the Provincial Observation Well Network, which is shown in this figure. It includes 40 drilled wells, and it's run by the Nova Scotia Department of Environment. And there's also another network called the Groundswell Network, which is a community-based groundwater monitoring network that includes 8 wells. That's run by the Nova Scotia Community College. Unfortunately, neither of these two networks provides real-time information. The way they're set up is that a technician has to drive out to each well to retrieve the data, so that they can't tell you what the current status of the aquifer is, and during a drought things can change quite quickly from day to day and week to week. So we saw that there was a need for real-time aquifer monitoring so that we would understand the current aquifer levels during the drought. Now, one of the barriers to this is the cost of real-time monitoring equipment can be quite expensive, about $2,500 per water well. So the goal of this project was to develop a real-time aquifer level monitoring network so that we would be prepared for future droughts in Nova Scotia. And we want to do this at a low cost, and we want to focus on shallow dug wells because these were the wells that were most likely to go dry. Now, it turns out that you can do low-cost groundwater level monitoring if you design and build your own monitoring equipment using Internet of Things or IoT technology, and you partner with community volunteers who provide access to their water wells where we can measure groundwater levels, and access to their Wi-Fi network so we can transmit the data to the internet. And you can do this for a cost of about $200 per site. Now, this figure shows a picture of the water level meters that we've designed for this project. And you can see on the figure on the right that the water level meters include a sensor, and that's an ultrasonic sensor which measures the depth to the water table. It includes an IoT device, and that turns on the sensor, collects the data, and then transmits the information to the internet. And then there's an antenna that helps connect to the local Wi-Fi network, and a battery pack to power the meter. And here's what the water level meter looks like when it's installed in a well. The meter hangs just under the well cap, and the way it works is the sensor at the base of the meter turns on once a day, and it sends an ultrasonic pulse down to the water level in the well. That pulse reflects off the water table and comes back to the sensor, and it uses that information to calculate the distance to the water table, and then it connects to the internet and sends that information to the internet to be plotted in real time. Here's an example web page for one of the water wells that we're monitoring. So as the water level meters measure the depth to the water table, they're sent to this web page and they're plotted immediately. And the information is displayed in a number of ways. In the upper left-hand graph, you can see the long-term water level information. And so this shows the water level over the course of a couple of years, and you can see the typical pattern that we see in many water wells in Nova Scotia here, where in spring you have fairly high water levels, and then during the summer water levels decline and reach a low during the late summer and early fall, and then as precipitation rainfall returns, you see water levels jump back up, and then they remain fairly high during the winter and the spring. On the lower left-hand graph, you can see the available drawdown plotted. Available drawdown is a term that hydrogeologists use to describe the height of water that's available in the well. And this graph actually shows the water level in the fall of 2019, and you can see in early September, the water level jumps up quite quickly. And that's actually in response to high rainfall that we had during Hurricane Dorian, which hit in September of 2019. So you can see that having real-time water level information allows you to record rapid changes that can occur due to severe weather events. And then on the upper right-hand side, you can see a fuel gauge, which shows you the current height of water in the well just at a glance, so that a homeowner can see exactly how much water they have left in their well. As part of the development of the real-time water level meters, we wanted to verify the accuracy of the water level data that they collected. So we did this by carrying out a pilot program in which we installed the real-time water level meters in 3 different wells. And in those wells, we also measured the water level with 2 other methods, a pressure transducer and also a manual water level measurement tape. And pressure transducers and manual measurements with water level tapes are the traditional ways that hydrogeologists use to measure water levels in wells. So we collected the data in all 3 ways in each well and then compared the data. And you can see the results in one of the wells in this graph, and you can see that the real-time water level meters, which use the ultrasonic sensor, quite closely reflect the data that we collected from the other water level measurement methods, and the error is about 2 centimeters compared to the pressure transducer. The pilot test results demonstrated that the real-time water level meters did an accurate job at measuring water levels in wells. So the next step in the project was to recruit community volunteers where we could place these water level meters in their wells across the province. And we were looking for about 10 volunteers across Nova Scotia. So we went about recruiting community volunteers by word of mouth, and also publishing articles in newsletters, and by carrying out media interviews, including radio and TV and internet stories. And we got a significant response from the public. There was a lot of interest through the media interviews, and so enough people came forward that we had many more people than we needed to build the network. And this slide shows a few examples of the dug wells where we installed the water level meters to build the network. The current monitoring network has 11 dug wells where we measure water levels, and they're located across the province from Yarmouth right to Sydney. And this figure shows the web page for the monitoring network where the public can access the water level data. There were a number of challenges that were encountered during the project. One thing that we discovered was that freezing temperatures affects the ultrasonic water level sensor, and this problem occurs because the water level meter is inside the well, which is quite a humid environment, and then during the winter when air temperatures drop, you can get frost forming on the ultrasonic sensor face, and that actually blocks the ultrasonic pulse and gives a false water level reading. So we solved this problem using two different approaches. The first thing that we did was to lower the water level meter deeper into the well where temperatures are warmer and where frost doesn't form. And the other thing that we did was to modify the software for the water level meter so that any water level measurements that were taken when there was frost on the sensor face were not sent to the internet. Another problem that we encountered was that rock-lined wells affects the sensor. So older dug wells in Nova Scotia were constructed by lining the walls of the well with rocks, compared to today where we use sort of smooth concrete rings to construct wells. But these older wells that were constructed with rocks, the rocks are irregular shaped, and what we found is that the ultrasonic pulse that was sent from the water level sensor would actually reflect off the rocks and give a false water level reading. So this problem was solved by placing a pipe inside the well that extended from the top of the well down to the water level, and then the water level meter was placed inside that pipe so that the ultrasonic pulse was constrained to inside the pipe and it couldn't reflect off the rocks on the side of the well. And another limitation of the design of this water level meter is that it runs off Wi-Fi, so you need to have a Wi-Fi signal at the wellhead. And in many cases, domestic wells do have that because many people have a Wi-Fi network at their house, and often the well is located close enough to the house where it can pick up the Wi-Fi signal. But that's not always the case. And so this sort of leads into some of the future work that we're doing. So right now I'm testing a cellular version of the meter, so it doesn't need a Wi-Fi signal at the well. It runs off a cell signal, so it's much more flexible because it can be used anywhere where you can pick up a cell phone signal. One of the other things that we're working on is testing these water level meters in different settings, such as surface water and also in drilled wells. So this summer we're planning to use this water level meter design in surface water settings to build a flood monitoring network in Nova Scotia. And we're also testing right now the same meter in a drilled well setting. We're working with Nova Scotia Community College to do that because in the past this water level meter has only been used on dug wells because that was the focus of this project, because dug wells are much more vulnerable to droughts. But we are still interested in seeing if we can monitor deeper drilled wells with this same design. And another thing that we're doing is we're looking at adding additional sensors for water quality to this meter. So the IoT device that's used in this water level meter has 18 input and output pins, and right now we're only using one of those for the ultrasonic water level sensor. So there's plenty of other inputs and outputs that can be used for additional sensors. So right now I'm testing two different types of sensors, and you can see them in the lower right hand corner of this figure: a conductivity sensor and a temperature sensor. And those can provide an indication of water quality, and the electrical conductivity sensor is particularly useful for monitoring any type of water pollution that includes a lot of salt in it. So a couple of examples would include road salt contamination of groundwater, or contamination of a well from seawater intrusion due to overpumping near the coast. And both of those types of contamination are quite common in Nova Scotia. We have one well in the network right now where we're testing these water quality probes, and this is the web page for that well. So you can see that in addition to the water level graphs that I showed you before, at this well we also have information about the water temperature being plotted and also the electrical conductivity. And electrical conductivity can be used to calculate the concentration of total dissolved solids in the well. It's just a calculation that's done in the software, so you can also see that plotted on the web page. And for anyone who's interested in using this device for monitoring or research purposes, there are step-by-step instructions available online for building the water level meter. And these instructions can be modified to monitor other environmental parameters, say for example air quality, and for use in other settings. And I've seen a very similar design used for monitoring snow thickness in glacial settings. So really you can use this technology for monitoring real-time environmental parameters for virtually any environmental parameter that you can get a sensor for. So that concludes my presentation, and at the bottom of this slide I've placed a number of links in case you would like additional information about the real-time groundwater monitoring network in Nova Scotia, or in case you would like further information about groundwater. Thank you.